Thank you so much. Those are the sweetest words. And, I just want to say to anyone listening, like, don't sit in pain, like, don't sit there. Like, life's too short for that, pick up
Yeah.
the phone, get some help, even if it's not from me, but like, start the journey to help yourself because you're worth it.
This has been a long time coming. I'm very, very excited about this episode today. Welcome back and welcome our guest on the show. We're sitting down with somebody who is not only a force in her industry, but has absolutely been a force in my life. I'd like to introduce you to Jacqueline Hurst. She is UK's leading life coach, the #1 best-selling international author of How to Do You, GQ Magazine's resident coach and columnist, teacher and speaker, and about 50 million other things because she is a rock star. I just found out maybe we're going to be neighbors at some point. It's very exciting. She's a woman of the world. Jacqueline Hurst, thank you for being here on the show.
What an intro. Thank you so much for that. That was like, wow, wow. And it's so funny sometimes when people do these sorts of intros, I'm like sitting there listening and I'm like, wow, who is she? Like, oh yeah, I wrote that book. It's like,
Isn't
it's
that,
so
I know,
random.
it's amazing, right? Because you're like, oh, just like overnight, I just became all of these things. And you hear the intro and you're like, yeah, wow. But how long has all of this taken you? Like, how did you get into this? I feel like you need to share your story. And just like so everyone knows, before you tell your story, when I found out about you and read your book, I immediately felt called that I had to talk to you. Like, I was like, I got to talk to this lady. Where do I sign? And you have actually coached me before. So I feel so fortunate that you get to be on the show and share a little bit of that with everyone else. But I can vouch for you, which is like my favorite thing in the whole world. Tell everyone how you started so we can talk about all the things that you have done in this time to help people live a better life.
Yeah, I'm, it's so interesting because it's like we're joking around about this intro and, and it is funny in some way because it puts you in the space, doesn't it? Of like, wow, there's the book and there's, as we were talking about earlier, like the school and she's a coach and blah, 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 and GQ and da, 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 da. But like, all of that sounds amazing. And of course it is amazing. And I've worked really hard to get there. But I always, especially when I'm on like podcasts and things and we can get really real about things, like, I didn't start in that space, right? I started in a squat. I don't know if you have that in America, like a drug den, like in the middle of like, nowhere, being like an class A drug addict, right? And I did that from the age of 15 to 25. And at 25, I had this sort of moment or two after a whirlwind of 10 years of absolute craziness, and I should not really be alive. To where I just had this moment and thought that this can't go on. And I didn't get there because I'd been having such a great time after the final year. Like it was really, really terrible. And, I had this moment of like, well, what do I want to do now? Like, do I want to carry on, using and abusing and living a life that was completely fucking crazy and doing all the wrong things in all the wrong places with all the wrong people, or did I want to find a better way to live my life? And it really was pulling myself up from the bottom of the bottom of the bottom of the bottom. And that was such an amazing experience. And also, one of the hardest things I ever did in my life was to get clean and sober and well, and not just from drugs and alcohol, but 3 or 4 other addictions of food issues, diet issues, depression, all of it, you name it, anxiety, like just I was a mess. I was a mental, emotional, physical, spiritual wreck, and so I started to get well when I was 25, and I did a lot of work. I did like meetings. I went to AA meetings and NA meetings, and I went to therapy, and I went to like a million different things that could help me get better. And I felt like I was kind of climbing the stairs, but I kept getting stuck. Like I couldn't get to the top of the stairs. I couldn't, I could talk about my issues all day long and how I was feeling all day long, but I couldn't get to how to change it. And it started to make me feel very frustrated. So I decided, having not been very good at school because I dropped out due to all of my addictions, that I had to learn how to do this myself because no one was going to do this for me, and that I could sit in therapy for years and years and years, which, by the way, I'm not knocking because I'm a great believer in it. But for me, I got to a point with it where it was like, okay, I need more. Like, I just, how do I do it? So I studied and I studied and I studied and I studied and I studied all around the world. And I learned all different tools and techniques. And there were a few things that really stuck out for me of basically helping me change my thinking, which in turn helped me change my life. And so in that sort of first year of learning all of that stuff, people kept coming up to me and saying, listen, oh, I've got this problem with X. And I would talk to them about it. And they were like, God, that's really helpful. Thank you. And that kept happening to a point where, because I'm super spiritual, it was like, this is a joke. Like, I get the message, universe. Like, I get it. I'm going to go out. I'm going to do it for myself. And I'm going to see. And this was a time in the UK where we didn't have life coaches, right? People were like, what? A what? What? And they just didn't know what it was. And a lot of people were like, what is that? I don't know. What do I need you for? So I started in a place where, we were not talking about mental health. We were still very stiff upper lip. No one was talking about mindsets and, resilience or anything like that. And a lot of people around me were saying, you're crazy to do this. No one is going to knock on your door. Like, that is not going to happen. And within 6 months, I did get a knock on my door. I got lots of knocks on my door, but I got one specific knock on my door from the Sunday Times, which was like a big newspaper here in the UK. And the SNAIL section said, look, we're doing this piece on, party girls to spiritual gurus. Like, could we do this piece on you? And I was like, yeah, sure. And it was like a real kind of affirmation that what I was doing was right. Like, I was on the right path. Like, people were going to be interested in this. And, slowly over the years, I built it. And, I've worked with over 9,000 clients now. And I've written my book and I've built a school. And it's all about helping people to understand that when you learn how to use your mind properly, you can change your life. And it sounds so like, yeah, change your mind, change your life. Like, I don't mean like that. I mean like deep shit. Like, learn how to use your mind and your life will change. And I think I'm babbling on here, but I think very much that we don't teach our kids this stuff at school. Like, this stuff, if we could teach kids this stuff, I think we'd have a totally different generation of like, this is how your mind works, right? This is how your feelings work. But like, no one ever taught me that at school. They taught me like math, which I'm dyslexic in, spelling, which I'm dyslexic in. Like, I just didn't do very well, right? But if someone had said to me, Jacqueline, this is how your feelings come about and this is how your mind works, I think, my whole life probably would have been different.
I totally agree with that. And it's funny because sometimes I like sit in insecurity about what I'm working on in myself. And I'm like, God, I must be the biggest hypocrite because of what I tell everyone in my community to do. And I give them ideas and I know that they work and I'm doing them, but there's also just always more that you can do because I think it comes down to asking better questions. When I found out about you, I was like, oh, interesting. Okay. I like her vibe. I like what she's talking about. I like, could I hire a life coach? That's so kind of weird and scary. Like, I don't know, maybe. And I just started out with the fact that you had just released your book, How to Do You. And I was like, well, this is a good way to kind of really at least pretend like I'm going through the coaching process and read the book and see what her thought process is. And the homework in the book was so deeply helpful. And like I said, it's because I think we're not being taught to ask ourselves better questions. And you're not just asking a question in the book, when it's like the homework section, it's like, here's a question, but then go deeper and then go deeper. And then what's the flip side of that? And what's your answer to that? And what would you tell someone if they were your friend and they were telling you that they suck at life or whatever? And I really think that that's a big piece of it. It's how your mind works because you have so much more in your mind than you think. And I'll go on another tangent quickly about the fact that now it's like we can rely on AI and also be very scared of AI and the trends that are happening there, that kids in school are using AI to fill out their essays. So we're not teaching people that you literally are not a robot. You have the power to know and learn and build just from continuing to educate yourself and ask better questions. And I continue to sit here and I'm like, is that the bottom of everything? That we're not having the conversation with ourselves. We're trying to find answers to surface level questions elsewhere, and then assuming that we're not enough when we see what we see.
Totally. And I think that's why coaching is really good. And it's like coaching is about a space where you can come in and you're with somebody who is not your friend, who is not your parent, who isn't projecting their shit onto you. It's a totally safe space. It's a judgment-free zone, and it's a brain that is not your brain, right? That is someone's gonna ask you these questions that is gonna be quite hard for us to ask ourselves. I think it was an Einstein quote that was like, "You can't fix the problem with the same mind that created it." And it's so true.
I have that highlighted in my Kindle notes from your book. That was literally at the top of my list because I'm like, duh. Thank you for reminding me of that. That is so important to remember.
Yeah, because we all are so, especially women, right? We are taught that we should be able to do all. You can be a mother, you can be a lover, you can be a sister, you can be a wife, you can be a this, you can be a that. And you've got to do it perfectly. It's like, who taught us that shit? Like, who is telling us that? I was thinking the other day as well, like on my walk, I was thinking like, I'm looking at social media a lot and I see a lot of, fakeness, right? Like this is social media. We all know this. This is nothing, new. And it's like, if a lot of my research has been like with men, speaking to men about like women and, what's their look and da da da. And a lot of men are like, I like women to look natural. I like to see them as natural as possible. Like that is the look that I like. So then I started questioning like, then why are women looking not natural? Like, what are we doing that for? Who is telling us this stuff? Who is teaching us this stuff? Like, there's all this stuff that when we start to kind of pull it apart, it's like, what's actually happening? And so because we don't know what's going on out there, and we can't always follow trends and we can't always, believe everything we see on social and as you say, AI and all of this stuff, we've got to rein it back in and get really present with ourselves and find out what is it that we're thinking and why are we thinking it and how is that helpful for us or where did we learn it, and these sorts of questions we can ask ourselves. They're so important.
Yeah, I agree. I want to shout something out specifically because I read the book and then I was like, that was fun. I want more. So usually I'll pick up the next book by an author, but instead for you, I was like, I'm going to hire her to be my coach. And so I hired you to be my coach. And I think I kind of alluded to this in a video, but I don't know if I ever totally came clean about it. But the morning I found out I was pregnant, I didn't tell my husband, but it was my first meeting with you. And we sat down and I was like, wow, I thought I had a lot to talk about, and now I have more. And you were like, I don't understand why I'm the first person that you're telling about this. And I was like, I have so many important reasons, so many great reasons. Anyway, that's just a fun fact. But as we started to kind of unpack some of the things that I was really just circling around, and that's what I think of when I think of like, what am I dealing with? What am I suffering with? It's like a thought that you're just constantly like putting on repeat in your mind all the time. And at some point you have to put a stop to it. But all those circling thoughts that were happening came to an abrupt halt when you said one specific thing to me that no matter how many times I met with you, this stands out in my mind constantly because it is such a thing, just a continuing theme in my life. You were like, well, I think, Amy, that it's time to just grow the fuck up. And I was like, well, excuse me, because I can count on so many different fingers how grown up I am. How dare you? I moved out at 18. I've had an apartment ever since. I worked through college. I quit college because I got the better job. I continued to get the better job. Somebody told me I was good at something too. And then I went and decided to make a business out of it. And I'm a big deal. I've been taking care of myself. I am an adult. I'm a good girl. But I have to make sure I do my morning routine every day. And I have to get it perfect. I have to check every single box. And this is how I have to operate. And this is how I have to live. And why? Because just because. And just you stopping me and saying, grow the fuck up, changed me, because I was like, I am grown up, but why is she saying this to me? And why am I not asking myself that question? What am I doing that is reflecting a child version of myself that is still trying to make someone else proud of me? What am I doing? And that has been on my mind every single day since I met you, because I see it all the time in myself, in other people, in interactions I have with clients, in conversations with family. I just see those glimmering moments of us still trying to make good and make somebody proud. And then it shapes you into how you act every single day, because you think you're doing it right, but you're really just settling on such a level. Do you feel like there's a theme here with everyone you talk to when it comes to like the adult you're speaking to and the child version of themselves that's coming out?
Definitely. And I think it's really important. I can't jump into that on session one with people. That's why I like to build up a rapport with people where you and I could have that conversation where I was like, Amy, grow the fuck up. Like, you can't jump in on session one saying that. Someone will everyone would leave you and they'd be like, she's the worst ever. But
so just everyone knows Jacqueline's got great etiquette.
I've got a story about that after this. But I've got loads of stories to know, like in story mode. But I definitely think that when we understand that most of the time, the things that trigger us, I always say to people that triggers are our teachers, right? And those triggers are usually not us at, 38, 39, 52, 41, whatever. It's our little child inside of ourselves. And sometimes it's that child that is running the show. And we're not even conscious of it. We're not even aware of it. But when you have, again, it doesn't have to be this deep-seated thing about, your childhood. It could just be what did I learn, for example, about love as a child? I learned that as long as I didn't say how I felt, it was all going to be okay. As long as I put their feelings ahead of mine, it was all going to be okay, right? As long as I put a smile on my face and said I was fine, it was all going to be okay. And maybe I've taken that into adulthood. And maybe that's what's causing me all these problems. Maybe. And so what we do is we play with that and we explore it. And we have this kind of fascination around our behavior and our thoughts and our feelings. And then we can go in really gently and change things in a humorous, fun, but strong, but yet childlike way. And I'm a big believer of how you do that really matters, because you're touching on touchy subjects sometimes. But when you understand that it's your inner child, for example, with you, of I need to make everyone proud because that's what I learned I had to do. When you start to really delve into that, you then get your space to change it and create a different way of doing it. It's like a lot of women, we get taught not to speak up. And when we learn, where we learned it and how it's affecting our lives and these kind of things, then we start to say, you know what, I'm not doing this to myself anymore. And I'm going to pick up my little girl and I'm going to put her on my lap and I'm going to say, what is it that you need? What do you need to say? I'm going to help you, And then you learn to speak up more and you start to find your life just expands and gets bigger. And it's all these sorts of things we can only really do when we're sitting in a safe space with someone, and we're not just sitting there going, oh, I had this terrible childhood and this happened and that's why I'm like this. No, you can't be a fucking victim. I mean, you can if you want to be. It's just not much fun there, and pick up and use your power, of your brain to push through.
It is a lot. It's a lot to go through. And there's some people who are hyper aware of where probably some of their tendencies are coming from in their childhood. And there are some people like me that are yeah, maybe a little, but not hyper focused on it. I don't blame my childhood for anything, but then I can also really connect everything to it. how do you ever find, I feel like when I hear your story, I think to myself, you're good, Amy. Like everything's pretty good. Like Jacqueline had it pretty bad. Like, Jacqueline had it pretty bad. So you know what? She's probably going to be able to teach you a lot, but like you've got it pretty good. Do you feel like people grapple with like a really hard time with balancing gratitude for the good, but at the same time being able to look at what's not right and just being able to look at it for what it is? I feel like we're constantly, let me ask this in a better way. It's easy to just make yourself feel bad for feeling like you feel bad because everything's mostly
Yeah,
fine.
but you
Like I
can't.
don't have a
You can't.
drug problem. I'm not, you know what I mean? Like, and so you just
But it
sit in a
doesn't
hole and
matter.
you deal with it.
It doesn't matter because everybody's, and I use the word trauma in a way that could be, falling over and hurting your knee, and the same as, abuse in some way. Like, we've all had forms of trauma, right? Being a human, you don't escape that stuff. My point is, like, it's relative. Okay, it's relative. You falling over could be a really painful, terrible thing for you. And
Yeah.
abuse can be a terrible thing for someone else, right? So my point is how you experience that trauma is relative to you, and we cannot compare it to other people. So if we're struggling with something, it's okay, right? It doesn't have to be because it's not as bad as that person, then we shouldn't deal with it. Like, no, where did we learn that? Where did we learn that? Like, if that is a problem and that is affecting you, you got to talk about it.
You got to talk about it. And because to me, it's like, oh yeah, go make sure you go to Alcoholics Anonymous. There's there to help you. Like that's so important. And go to NA, go to AA. Like that sounds so natural. But then when you look at yourself and you say like, but then how are you finding a place of people who will listen and who you can rely on and who you can open up to so that you can just get this dribble out and hear from someone what you're dealing with that doesn't have to be the way that it is. And so I think just like we compare with everything, that comparison could happen. And then therefore it's like, oh no, I'm just going to push through. I'm just going to push through it. Where just having one conversation with somebody or having five conversations with a few people or having a group that you can go to, we think it's like, oh, I don't want to pay for that, or I don't want to like exert the time, or I think that looks bad to my family. I'm not going to do it. But it ends up, no matter introverted, extroverted, whatever, completely changing your life because you just got outside of yourself for a minute.
Yeah, and I think there's always a place to go to talk. And I think that, none of us are like islands. We can't always do it on our own, even if we're like this type A personality. And also with that stuff, like you can push it away, but only for so long. And if you're pushing it away, what are you doing to cope? You're going to be doing something that isn't healthy or isn't kind or isn't, something that you're really happy with to cope with that. Which is why finding peace within yourself is like the most priceless thing you can do. And it's like, I was saying to someone, I think just this morning, and, a lot of my clients are like, billionaires and they have massive companies and all of this kind of stuff. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they're happy people in the beginning, right? Like that, you know what I mean? So it's like, you can be carrying all this stuff and saying, well, I've done really well and I've made a load of money, or I've done this and I've done that, and I should be. But why should you be? You can still be struggling. So having a space to go, a safe space to go, is really, really important. There's nothing wrong with saying, you know what, I'm struggling a bit. Or even, I'm not struggling, but I just need to talk something out. Like, it's okay.
When you, without like, I'm not trying to get into like the very confidential nature of your business, but when you think about if you could distill, because I have this belief system that we all think our problems are very special. We think our problems are special and hard and like nobody's going to understand them. But at the end of the day, like, are we all really dealing with almost the same thing? Like, if you look at the heart of what challenges your clients bring to you, what are people dealing with?
I think what you said is absolutely correct. Like, a lot of the time when people say, oh oh my God, and I ate, 12 cookies, and then I went and I threw them away, and then I went back into the bin and I ate it, and there is something fucking wrong with me. And I'm like, well, actually, you're like the fourth person today said the same thing. Like, it's not really, right? Like, because we do things like that in secret, or we think like it's only us that can do these things. I mean, that was just an example, right? It's nice to know that we're not crazy or mad, or, like, people do things to cope. It's okay. One of the things I think that is consistent is fundamentally people don't believe that they are good enough. And I think if we could all change that, things would really change. Like, you've got to believe that you are good enough. You are a good enough person. You're a good enough friend. You are a good enough everything. Like, as long as you're doing the best you can, then your best is good enough. And I think that's a really important thing to think about, like how we have such high expectations on ourselves that we would never have on each other, right? And when we understand that good enough is good enough, I think things can just be turned down a little bit. It's like, it's okay. It's all right if I didn't get my morning walk in. It's okay if I didn't manage to, take that thing back and do this and help my dad and, get my 17th client of the day. And like, it's okay. There's always tomorrow. It's okay. I've done my best. And I think your best is more important than anyone else's best for you. That's another thing. Like, and your thoughts about who you are, and, it's up to you to do that work to like yourself. It's not up to anyone else to do that. I think a lot of the time people come to me and, they talk to me about things, and I always say, like, well, what you're telling me is you want other people to do for you what you're not doing for yourself. And that's never going to work, right? Like, that is never going to work, because if they give it to you, they can also take it away, and then where are you left? So a lot of the work I do is about teaching people how to build their foundations on, strong cement rather than sand, because sand isn't going to work. And sand is other people's opinions and other people's, either whether they tell you they like you or they don't like you, or you've done this well or you haven't done this well. Like, none of that is really anything you can control or should even really be worried about or think about.
And the more I hear other people's opinions, I've been putting it through. This might be kind of rude, but I've been putting people's comments through like a filter that's like, whatever this person is going to say to me, especially if it begins with the phrase "you should," because I just can't. I like, if somebody shoulds on me, I just like, you lost me. Like, I don't even know what's coming after this. I put it through this filter that's like, whatever this is a projection of this person's life experience. Whatever their life experience is, whatever decision that they've made about their life experience, whatever they're about to tell me right now is a projection, and actually has nothing to do with me. And I can be okay with whatever they say, and I can just let it.
Isn't that peaceful? It's like such a peaceful thing when you
When
got
it
your head in
works,
the right
it's
space.
great.
Yeah, when it works. We need to do some more work, girl. I mean, yes, it can work, because fundamentally what they think of you is none of your business, and what they think of you, you cannot control. So I like, I'm a control freak, and the one thing that I can control is my head. That's it. The one and only thing I can control is how I think about things. So I better get that in shape to have a peaceful life. And once you understand that a lot of the time what people think or say or do, not a lot of the time, all of the time, what people think or say or do has nothing to do with you, you have complete freedom. And that work's really important, right? Like, you're either going to love my work or you're not going to love my work. None of that's got anything to do with me. Like, that's your decision. You're allowed to do that.
So when you talk about building that foundation, do you feel, if you could just kind of give one question or like homework assignment or whatever you want to call it to somebody listening about how they start to build that foundation, like, where do we start with asking ourselves the right questions about this?
One of my favorite questions is why. It's so simple. It's one word, right? Why? I'm upset today. Why? Oh, because I didn't get that, thing I went for. Okay. And why are you upset about it? Because I'm clearly not good enough. Why? Right? And when you start to unpack with that why, you'll get to the bottom of it and you'll be like, okay, this isn't important. Next.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So why
I
is a
think it's
really
the
good question.
journey to getting to that it's not important quicker so that you can move on and carry that piece forward.
Yeah, which is really important. And that is about mindset and learning how to use your brain correctly, right? And not making things mean things that they don't mean, not taking things personally when it's not for you to take things personally. Like this kind of work, as I said, is priceless. And I always say to people, like, you can buy a Birkin if you want, you're going to get some pleasure out of it for a little bit, but you're not going to have a life of peace, you know? Like, so the investment is similar. I mean, it's not my work is not as much the Birkin, but you know, my point is it's an investment, right? It's an investment.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, where do you want to put it? Like for me, I just wanted to have peace of mind. I wanted to put my head on the pillow and not have anything be going through my brain or obsessing over things or analyzing things or worrying about things or being stressed about, like, I just didn't want it. And I think that's the beauty of this work is like you can find peace. To me, peace is everything.
100%. I just love how like you just emulate what you are hoping to help other people to achieve. I can feel it from you. Like I can feel that you are at peace in your life. You might be dealing with like things. I'm sure you're dealing with things and you're probably asking yourselves questions, but I can just it comes off of you that you have this agreement and therefore belief that you're good enough and that what happens tomorrow isn't going to change that and things can always be better, but like according to what? Like I just feel that from you. I just feel it. I just wanted you to
I
know that.
I appreciate that, and I love that, and I think that's probably a big part of my success in my business, is that it's 100% authentic. Like there's no bullshit, and I think that's another reason of like you know the beauty of life and the extremes that I went to. Like I now realize why I had to go to those extremes so that I can sit across from people and look them in the eye and say, I know what's going on in your head and this is how
Yeah.
we change it. I know how you're feeling, and this is how. And people will say, "Well, yeah, I guess she does because that's been her journey." And I think that was a really important part of my work. Like as I said, I had gone to a therapist and things like that, and they were all amazing, but none of them had really taken the journey that I had seen and experienced and lived through, to hell and back. That I looked at and thought, you don't get me. You're never going to get me because you've never experienced that kind of pain, or you've never experienced that kind of deep obsession, or you've never experienced that deep form of addiction and needing something in order to believe you can live. Like you've just not been there. And that is not to say, as I said, and I keep putting that out there, like this is not to say therapy is wrong or anything like that. It's just for me, I needed a me to sit in front of me and say, hey, this is how it goes, right? And someone to really, do what I did with you, like grow the fuck up. What are you doing? Like that straight talking is something I can hear really well. And I think that's important to share that with people in a kind and loving, safe space, especially type A's, because that's how we hear it. And I do believe in practicing what I preach. Like I could not be someone sitting here sharing with you the tools of what to do and not be doing it myself. Like I just couldn't do that. I just couldn't do that. I couldn't.
Mm.
Like I've got to be real and authentic. It's just, there's no other
I
way.
think it's just really refreshing. I think it's refreshing. I think sometimes people need different styles of teaching in this format too. I think, you know, there have been moments where I'm like, I deserve to be punished. Somebody come yell at me. And so maybe you have to work through that too. But like your style
Yeah.
really, like you said, you have a flow to it. You really have to assess who the person is and what they're going through and be delicate with that. But it's really authenticity and I really commend you for that. So I can talk all day long about how I recommend you as a coach. I think everyone should sign up. Just sign up, like at 100%, take up her calendar, make it happen. Um, but can you tell me what you've been building with the school? Like I feel like I haven't scratched the surface on that. I'm very curious.
Yeah, the school is really cool. It's online. It's called the Life Class, and it has two courses. One is a course to do for yourself, If you're good at like sitting down and doing your own work, it's called the foundation course. So you get like a really good idea of how your brain works and how to use it. And then the other course at the life class is how to become a certified life coach. So I train people to do what I do. And it's an 8-week course. It's online. You go through a module each week, and at the end of each week, I speak with you and my other students, and we get you into coaching really quickly. So by module 3, you're coaching people, and I'm coaching you, coaching them. And it is such an amazing, wild, crazy, difficult, wonderful, easy, journey of like everything. You have these moments of like, oh my God, I'm never going to get this. And then you have these moments of like, yeah, I've got it. Oh my God, this is a bit like, it's so lovely. And it's funny, it's not something I kind of promote or market or advertise, but I've had quite a lot of people go through it. And I don't know why with that. I've just got this gut feeling of like, whoever's meant to come to that will come to that. Like they'll find it. And that has been the way, but it's cool because it's online, so people can do it all around the world. As with my coaching, you can do it anywhere. So
Yeah, because I definitely stayed right where I was to coach with you. I didn't fly all the way to England to make that happen. But I might be able to see you in Florida at some point.
Yeah, that would be lovely. I love Florida. It's nice, hot, and beautiful.
I have like one really random question about somebody signing up to be a life coach. Have you ever corresponded with someone before they decided to dive in on the course and them have like imposter syndrome? Like, do I need to work through all of my stuff before I can help somebody work through all of their stuff?
No, because you're going to do it in the course, because it's going to come up, right? It's going to come up and you're going to be like, I can't do this. And I'm going to be like, what? Right? And so all of that stuff, because of course, remember, if you're training to be a life coach, you're not, in my school anyway, you're not just going to be standing there like teaching people what to do and think. It's like you're all in, which means you bring yourself, and with yourself comes your stuff. And that comes up as you go through, because I want you to, fill out all of these things and do all of these things as if you were your own client and what comes up for you. And so we bring that into the course. And often there's, a couple of people on it at the same time, 3 people, maximum 4. It used to be open only 3 times a year, but now it's open all the time. And we have a conversation first, but I won't take on more than 4 people on each course each week. So we have real personal one-to-one time, so like if you had imposter syndrome and you were like, I want to be a life coach, you would be in on the call with me and some other student, and they would be coaching you on that. Wow. And you would be learning about your imposter syndrome and how the coaching is working. So it's like a double-edged sword. It's really amazing.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. That sounds amazing. I could talk to you absolutely all day long, but I actually stole some free coaching when we first started the call before we were recording, so I can't take up your entire day. Jacqueline, I'm going to link to everything that we talked about so that people can discover you, the life class, how to do you, the book, get it on Kindle immediately, and then order a hard copy because it's worth it. Go through the exercises. It's so incredible. And I really hope if somebody felt very called to talk to you that they will sign up for your coaching as well, because you've absolutely shifted the course of my life by keeping it real with me. And I deeply appreciate and acknowledge your time for that.
Thank you so much. These are the sweetest words. And, I just want to say to anyone listening, like, don't sit in pain, like, don't sit there. Like, life's too short for that, pick up the phone, get some help, even if it's not from me, but like start the journey to help yourself, because you're worth it.
Beautiful. Jacqueline Hurst, one of a kind. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.